crap is it?
Oh, here it is.
What's up guys, my name is Mac and welcome to the iPhone XR review. So in today's video I'm just going to be talking about what is so good about this phone and why I think this is the best value when it comes to an iPhone this year. So first off, let's talk about the design. The design is just exactly the same as the iPhone XS and XS Max and the last year's iPhone X. The only difference is that there are larger bezels and it's made out of aluminum. Basically that's it, and it has a bunch of colors. The colors are white, black, blue, yellow, coral, and product red, which is this one. The interesting thing about the glass on this, of course the front is the quote-unquote world's strongest glass, and on the back it's kind of a mixture of last year's and this year's, basically causing it to be a middle ground when it comes to strength. So it's around middle, and it's actually not bad according to some drop tests. And it sometimes is even better than the iPhone XS in terms of durability. The chassis is made out of a 7000 aerospace grade aluminum that is anodized, so it allows it to be the same color as the back. So that's actually pretty freaking cool. Now let's talk about that screen. It is a 6.1 inch LCD, 1792 by 828 resolution, 326 pixels per inch. It is a perfectly good LCD display. It is very color accurate, has the P3Y color spectrum, it has True Tone, basically causing it to adapt to the color temperature in your room, so it looks better on the eyes and stuff like that. The phone is just as sharp as the iPhone 8, and honestly, you probably won't even notice the difference if you're upgrading from an 8 Plus. One disadvantage of the phone that I forgot to talk about is the fact that there's no more 3D touch, so I guess to the people who actually use 3D touch, it's kind of a bummer there's no peek and pop anymore, but all I can say is like you're not necessarily gonna miss it if you're coming from like a 5S, 6, or SE. You're not gonna be missing it. You're gonna be completely fine with the display. So they replaced it with a thing called haptic touch. So basically, you press on a button like this, and you get like haptic feedback. So basically, that's what they're gonna be replacing it with, and it only works on a lock screen using the flashlight buttons and the camera buttons and the currently the control center using the extra options and stuff like that. That's all you really got right now, but apparently Apple is saying that with future iterations of iOS we're going to be getting some more features with haptic touch, so I assume that they're going to eventually be adding peek and pop back and stuff like that, so yeah, I'd like to see that in the future. Now let's talk about the specs. The specs is the cool thing about this phone. It is the exact same A12 Bionic processor as the iPhone XS and XS Max. So basically, it's just as snappy and just as fast, and Face ID is just as accurate as you guys can see. It is actually still quite fast. So I wouldn't worry about the speed. However, it does have one less gig of RAM, so some apps may unload from the background, but honestly, you probably won't even have a problem with that since it's a lower res screen, has less pixels to push, so honestly, you won't even notice the difference. iOS 12 is also very well optimized, so that's also another reason why you won't notice the difference. The next thing we're going to be talking about is the camera. So the camera is actually the exact same shooter as found on the iPhone XS and XS Max. The only difference is that it doesn't have that telephoto lens. It is the exact same wide-angle f1.8 aperture lens that still has smart HDR and stuff like that, so you're going to be getting the exact same photos as you would on a XS and XS Max. You just won't be getting the second telephoto lens for 2x zoom. It also has software-based portrait mode, so basically what that means is you're not going to be getting the super accurate edge detection of the two telephoto and wide-angle lens combo, but you still are getting a fairly good portrait mode, and honestly, you kind of have an advantage here because you're able to take a wide angle shot instead of taking a telephoto shot, so you have a wider field of view when it comes to your portrait mode shots. And just like iPhone XS and XS Max, you're able to edit the aperture and go all the way up to f16 or all the way down to f1.4. It's actually quite crazy, and it looks amazing. Another downside to the camera though is the fact that it only detects people, which honestly isn't even that big of a deal. But you know, that's up to you. Do you use portrait mode a lot? That's the real question. So honestly, that's not even that big of a deal. That just depends on who you are. So I'm going to be showing you guys some shots that are taken off the iPhone XR. I don't have a ton, but I'll try to get some for you guys. Looks pretty good, right? I know. So next thing we're gonna be talking about is the battery life, because this battery life is possibly the best battery life on an iPhone, and honestly is probably another selling point for this phone, because apparently it's better than the 8 Plus, which already was amazing when it comes to battery life. And from my personal experience, this can easily last the day, and honestly, it sometimes even lasts like 20 to 30% at the end of the day, which is pretty freaking good. That's all thanks to the low resolution screen, of course, and the LCD panel, because that really does help. Now we're going to be talking about benchmark scores, because the benchmark scores on this phone is actually really good, and I actually should have included this in the speed section, but, you know, I'm just going to put it in here. It gets some insanely high scores on Geekbench, and it's absolutely insane, actually, how high these scores actually are. So I ran this test on iOS 12.1 right as it released, and I got a single core score of 4,817, which is insanely high. That's actually rivaling some Core i7 CPUs when it comes to single-threaded performance. And on our multi-core score, we got 11,446. Those scores are insane, man. It's so fast. You will not be choking this phone down. You can easily edit 4K video. Not even a problem. It could be 4K 60 FPS, and it'll be perfectly fine. And I'm actually be making a video on the new iPad Pros, because these things are absolute beasts. So if you guys want to see that, tell me that in the comment section down below. So the final verdict: is the iPhone XR a good phone? Heck yes, and it's honestly worth the $750 price tag. If you're comparing this to the iPhone XS Max, you're literally getting like a good 85 to 90% of the features at $250 cheaper. So honestly, I think the compromises are good compromises, and I think if you got your hands on one and look at it in your nearest Apple store or whatever you can see it, and you'll be absolutely stunned when it comes to the display and the overall quality of the phone. So I think it's worth $750 in my personal opinion. You know, of course it would be nicer if they dropped it down $50, because who doesn't like to save money? But honestly, I believe the sweet spot for this phone is the 128GB model, which runs you $800. So for $50 extra, you're getting another 64 gigs. So, you know, I think that's pretty worth it. That's actually the one I got. So anyways, guys, if you like this style of video and want to see more tech-related content, make sure to drop a like. And it was really fun to make. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.